The long night. Why humans invented hope, fire, and each other. There is a very specific moment in winter, and everyone knows it, even if they pretend not to. When you look outside and think, oh, this might be permanent. The sun has been doing the bare minimum, the cold has opinions, your optimism has quietly stepped outside to answer the call of nature. And if you're honest, really honest, you don't just miss the light, you miss the certainty that it's coming back. Which is awkward because certainty is not something the universe is big on providing. So humans did what humans always do when the environment stops cooperating. We gathered, we lit fires, and we told stories loud enough to drown out the dark. That's not poetry. That's survival. Welcome to The Returning Light, a Firelight Dialogue special mini-series. I'm your resident storyteller and local curmudgeon, Pat Gansor. This is not a show about religion in the way people usually mean it. It's a show about patterns humans notice before we had names for them. And the first pattern, the one that everything else hangs on, is winter. Winter is not just a season, it's a psychological event. Food disappears, animals vanish, the world narrows. And if you're an early human, without astronomy, without calendars, without the comforting lie of this is just temporary, winter feels less like a phase and more like a verdict. Which explains why the winter solstice mattered so much. The longest night of the year wasn't symbolic, it was a cliff edge. The question wasn't, isn't this cozy? The question was, is the sun done with us? So humans watched and waited. And when the night didn't kill them outright, they marked it. They lit fires. Not for aesthetics, but for orientation. Fire says, here is the center. Fire says, you are not alone. Fire says, something still works. Around those fires, stories emerged. Not doctrine, not theology, stories. Because stories regulate fear. They give the nervous system something to hold on to when the environment refuses to explain itself. This is where people like to roll their eyes and say, primitive superstition, which is adorable coming from a species that panics when the Wi-Fi drops for less than 3 minutes. Early humans weren't stupid. They were paying attention. They noticed that after the longest night, something subtle happened. The days began to stretch. Not dramatically, not reassuringly. Just enough that you had to be watching. And that, right there, is the birth of hope. Not optimism. Hope. Optimism says everything will be fine. Hope says something changed. I don't know what it means yet, but it changed. That difference kept people alive. So winter solstice rituals formed. Not because people wanted gods, but because they needed continuity. Evergreens show up because some life refuses to die. Candles show up because light is stubborn. Smoke shows up because transitions need markers. Smudging, burning herbs, resins, plants, wasn't mystical performance art. It was ancient environmental psychology. Smell changes mood. Smoke moves space. It says, this moment is different from the last one. No chance required. And if all of this sounds suspiciously universal, good, because it is. Egypt told the story through Ra's nightly journey through the underworld. Mesopotamia tracked descent and return with gods who died badly and came back changed. Zoroastrianism framed light and dark as ethical tension that mattered every day, not just ritually. Different languages, same observation. Darkness does not win forever, but, and this is crucial, it also does not leave on your schedule, which is why winter rituals were not celebrations of victory, They were exercises in not panicking too early. You didn't feast because things are good. You feasted because sharing food prevented hoarding, and hoarding destroys groups faster than cold. You told stories because silence breeds terror. And you watched the fire because watching something stable steadies the mind. None of this was abstract. All of it was practical. This is the first thing modern people forget when we talk about ancient beliefs. These systems weren't invented to explain the universe. They were invented to keep communities intact long enough to notice that the light was, in fact, coming back. We'll pause here for a moment because even ancient survival stories had patrons. And I will thank the people who make it possible for this show to exist without telling me what conclusions I'm allowed to reach. Then we'll come back to winter, fire, and why waiting without losing your mind is a learned skill. The mistake modern readers make is assuming winter rituals were about worship. They weren't. They were about time management. Winter forces stillness. Stillness exposes fear, and fear needs structure, or it will eat everything. So, humans built structure. Calendars came later, myths came first. And when the light returned incrementally, annoyingly, without fanfare, humans did something else very important. They remembered. They told the story again the next year, and the next, and the next. Because memory is what turns observation into tradition. This is where religion begins, not as a belief, but as repetition. You do the thing again because it worked last time. You light the fire again because it helped. You tell the story again because it kept people steady. And over generation, the story accumulates language, characters, and eventually rules. But at the bottom of it all is a very simple instinct. Do not let the dark convince you that it's permanent. That instinct becomes the spine of every seasonal tradition that follows. 40-day fasts, spring purges, liberation stories, resurrection myths. They all start here, with a group of humans staring into a fire on the longest night of the year, daring to believe that the sky might not be finished yet. Here's the thing that winter teaches, whether you want it to or not. Fear doesn't disappear when the light returns. It just loosens its grip, which means the work isn't over. Winter is the lesson in endurance. Spring will be the lesson in change. And humans, historically speaking, are much better at surviving than they are at transforming. So we invented rituals for that too. But it all begins here, with fire, with story, with the decision to sit together instead of scattering into the dark. Next time, we'll talk about the most inconvenient number humans ever agreed on, and why transformation takes longer than your patience would prefer. I'm Pat Cansor. This is Firelight Dialogues. Join me again next time. Take what you need, leave the rest. Live and let live, and keep the fire lit.